Woo! Getting pumped up for the city championship. That's right. What separates good debaters from great debaters? Being able to adapt and add new things into your toolbox of arguments. That's what I'm here to talk about today, is a new argument for your debater's toolbox. That is the overconsumption criticism. Now, this is an argument that we've been working on here at Debate Kansas City for the last couple weeks, and it's now time to share it with you. The overconsumption criticism, basically in a nutshell, says that we consume a ton of material goods here in the United States, and that we need to focus on our consumption of that energy, i.e. reducing that consumption, rather than finding ways to make that consumption more acceptable, which is what renewable energy would do. I'll take you sort of step by step through each section of the shell, which should give you a pretty good idea of the argument, and then at the end we'll talk about some brief ways that you might answer it if you happen to see this when you're affirmative. One thing that makes this criticism a little different than other criticisms you might have run is that we're going to use a particular metaphor. Now, this metaphor is one of a clothes dryer. That's right, think about it, a clothes dryer. Did you know that a clothes dryer happens to be one of the most energy intensive appliances in your house? In fact, it uses about 15 to 20% of a household's total energy use over the course of a year. And that's actually the first car in the shale. That's from CNN. Think about this. What if everyone in America were to, instead of drying all their clothes in a clothes dryer, do about half of that, half their clothes on a line? You would save 7% of total household energy, 7 to 10%, somewhere in that neighborhood, over the course of a year. That is a lot of energy. That's more energy than is currently produced by renewable energy across all of the United States right now. So we're talking about massive amounts of energy here. So you're going to try to lead people throughout this criticism to think about using a clothesline instead of a clothes dryer as a metaphor for reducing the amount of energy and stuff we consume. Now, the second piece of evidence in this consumption file is pretty important because it outlines how much consumption we have here in the United States. The card is from a researcher at the University of Alberta by the name of Dennis Sorensen. And the important part about this card is that in the last 40 years here in the United States, we have quadrupled the amount of energy and goods and services that we consume. We've become consumption machines. We are essentially eating the planet with our consumption. So this outlines the harms for this, and it says that if we don't get our consumption in check, if we don't pull ourselves back, then it doesn't matter how much renewable energy we build, we're going to end up over-consuming and destroying the planet. So this is the impact card. This is the card that you will want to point to and say, Judge, this is why you vote for our criticism, because if we don't change our consumptive ways, the world will end. Boom. All right, so far you have your metaphor and you have the impact. What are we missing? If you said link, that's right. That's on page 3 of the file, which is attached on the blog here. And it's the one that says the first affirmative constructive, the focus that they will have is on renewable energy or alternative energy. Right? That's the topic this year. Now, the problem with this kind of focus, when we focus just on alternative energy and not on reducing our consumption, is it actually leads to more consumption. Now you're thinking, but that's okay. Well, not really. First and foremost, if we feel like what we're consuming is clean, we're more apt to consume more of it. So we buy more goods and services that are produced maybe with some cleaner fuel, but we're also going to be using fossil fuels in the process. And also, just sort of the general mindset is still going to lead us to overconsume and destroy the planet in a larger sense. So maybe we make it a little cleaner with fossil fuels, but we're still mining for ore someplace else that destroys the environment. The real focus here is that just switching to a different type of energy doesn't change the mindset, doesn't change the way people are living their lives, so we're still on a path to, as you remember, the impact card, which says we're going to destroy the Earth. So That's one thing to keep in mind, is that the link here is that not focusing on consumption is the real problem. Now that card is from Thomas Prince. He's an associate professor of natural resources at the University of Michigan. It's in his book from 2002, and it sort of outlines all the reasons why focusing simply on supply side, in other words, where we get our energy from, isn't going to be effective, and that really the only effective solution that you're going to be able to find to the crisis, the ecological crisis, or to global warming, is from personal reduction, which seamlessly moves into the last part of the criticism, which is the alternative. How are we different? What is our suggestion on making things change? And this is from the Warrington Institute of Public Policy in 2004, and it outlines that, you know, you can have all sorts of policy proclamations. You can have fees, fines, whatever, but that's not going to solve as much or nearly as well as personal choices. Making the personal choice to use the clothesline instead of the clothes dryer, to turn off the lights, to decide that, you know, one is okay, we don't need two. It outlines this. So you're going to be telling the judge at the end of the day to be using a clothesline, and that it's about our personal choice in this round to stop consuming, and that the affirmative case is blindsided. They're just focused on renewable energies, which will continue to force us to overconsume because we never actually think about the problem. In the end, if we did, we realize that our solutions are actually clotheslines, you know, using the wind and the sun to dry my clothes as opposed to using some sort of solar panel to heat or to use electricity to send to my dryer to turn it. We're going to kind of go straight to the source, if you will. All right, so that's sort of the argument in a nutshell, just in general, from, you know, metaphor to link to impact to alternative. You might be thinking, this is a pretty good argument. How would I answer that on the negative? Well, you have a couple weapons. If you're going to run this, you're going to have to be prepared. First of all is the permutation. If I was on the affirmative, I would certainly run a permutation that says, of course, reducing our consumption is a good idea. So is increasing the amount of renewable energy. Why can't we just do both? Now, on the negative side, when you're running this position, there is a block that is right after the shell that makes several of the arguments as to why you wouldn't be able to do this. Let me look here real fast. First of all, is you can't incentivize consumption, i.e. consumption of renewable energy, and reduce consumption at the same time. And there's several other arguments, such as it's a mixed signal, you're not going to get as much solvency off of the alternative as you would like. And there are a few cards in there that I would suggest you read over and really kind of flesh out the reason why you wouldn't want to do them at the same time. Alternately, if you're debating on the affirmative, you're going to want to explain all the reasons why it's possible that you could reduce consumption and still do your plan at the same time. Perhaps your plan doesn't increase consumption. You know, there's a debate to be had there. Lastly, if I'm on the affirmative, I would talk about impacts. And your affirmative case certainly has some impacts. I would weigh those against the possible criticism. And then, of course, you know, all the other things that you would do against the criticism, make sure that you're asking good questions in cross-examination. All in all, I think this is a pretty good position. Please don't hesitate to you know, call or send me an email. My email is Allen, ALLENIC, at umkc.edu. Feel free to email me anytime with questions about this file or anything else having to do with the overconsumption file. With that, I thank you, and I hope you are having a good time preparing for the city championship, and I'll see you on Friday.